Craig Simpson, representing the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. Welcome. To be followed by Charles Bowen. Is Charles Bowen here? Come on down to the front, please. And Barbara Thompson. Is Barbara here? Okay. And Greg Adams. Is Greg here? Okay. If you'd like to just come on down to one of the front seats. And Dolores Bailey. Is Dolores Bailey here? All righty. Welcome, Craig.
Good evening, Chairman Bolova. Good evening, Supervisors. My name is Craig Simpson, and I'm representing ATU Local 689, which represents about 7,500 members at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority and another 2,500 or so retired transit workers. I want to speak tonight about the WMATA budget and Fairfax's contribution. The general manager is proposing service reductions that I think are pretty draconian, and I just want to describe them briefly so that you understand. They're talking about taking 58 rail cars out of service during the peak periods is one proposal. Truncating the yellow line on the weekends to a shuttle just between two stations. It wouldn't go into the District of Columbia or pass by National Airport. Waiting times of up to 30 minutes between trains. Opening the system later during the week and on weekends and closing it earlier on Friday and Saturday nights. Outright elimination of 15 bus routes, elimination of segments of 31 other bus routes, longer waiting times on 51 routes, and some service restructuring that will affect other people. These reductions are proposed in a little larger amount than is necessary to reach the $34 million that the general manager targets in service reductions. In addition to that, the general manager has about a $40 million line in his budget that he has no real funding source for. So the total amount that doesn't have any service is about $74 million. I would just ask you to consider the impact of what those service reductions would be and how much worse they would even be if you didn't get the $40 million that I referred to. When it comes to WMATA, we often look at it as, or sometimes we look at it as a money pit. There's money going out and we don't exactly see what comes back. But there have been some studies of that. And KPMG Pete Marwick, a reputable firm, found that for every dollar Virginia invests in WMATA, it gets a 12.4% annual return. Between 1977, when the first station opened in Virginia, and 2010 now, Metrorail will have generated $2.1 billion in tax revenues and 91,000 permanent jobs. When you're looking forward to the Silver Line extension into Tysons, or even development around existing Metrorail stations, consider the impact that the message to developers, financiers, and prospective tenants will be if you're talking about these kind of rail service reductions. They will get very nervous. The whole reason they want to locate around a rail station is because they believe it's permanent and will continue to be there. But the message that they'll get is uncertainty. And so that's the downside. The actual contribution that it would take for Fairfax to close this would be about a little over $6 million more than you paid last year. That's money, but understand that you'll get even more back if you're able to do that. I understand that it's also dependent on other jurisdictions. So I commend you for keeping the option open here to make that contribution and urge you to continue to do so. I know we'll do our part in the District of Columbia and Maryland to try to ensure that they do the same thing. Just urge you to keep that option open. I'd be negligent if I didn't talk about bus service, because that affects our most vulnerable citizens. In fact, WMATA's own statistics show there's a $30,000 annual income difference between our bus riders and our rail riders. Over half our bus riders are minority. On the rail side, it's about 25%. 2/3 of our bus riders are female. On the rail, it's about 50%. The average rail rider household has over 2 cars per household. 1 in 5 bus riders doesn't own a car. So the bus service cuts affect people who are most vulnerable more than anyone else. The other part of general manager, I'll just briefly mention it, is bus fares are proposed to rise at about a 20% rate, rail fares at about a 15% rate. So the burden, even in terms of fares, is hitting the most vulnerable people hardest. And I'd urge you to look at that. I know Jeff sits on the Metro board, as does Ms. Hudgens, and I'd urge you to look at that when you make your deliberations. So from an economic perspective and a social justice perspective, it's vital we don't choke off the economic recovery we have by curtailing both Metrorail and Metrobus service. I urge you to keep your options open to fully fund it so we don't cut service. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.